everybody, it's Miss Jaimie from the Hampton Bays Public Library, and welcome to my kitchen today where we will be making apple pie Play-Doh. So to make this great fall scented Play-Doh, you are going to need a stove, so that means you will need an adult with you because it will get very hot and we don't want anybody to get hurt. So first thing, let's go over our ingredients and our materials that you will need. You're going to need a pot. I'm using a medium-sized saucepan. We're going to need a spoon to mix things with. We are going to need about a tablespoon of vegetable oil, about 2 cups of baking soda, and 1 cup of cornstarch. And we are going to need some red food coloring and about 1.5 cups of water. And at the very end, we are going to need a cutting board, which I have right under my pot, and some allspice and cinnamon, about 1 tablespoon of each. You can use, that's for our scent, you can use essential oils. You can get a cinnamon essential oil if you don't want your spices to affect your color of your dough. But the spices work fine, it just will change your color, it won't be as red. I'm using red food coloring. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put all of our ingredients except for the spices into our pot. I'm going to put the spices aside and we are going to measure out. I have already measured out my water. So this is 1.5 cups in a liquid measuring cup. I measured right up to the 1.5 cup line and I put it on a flat surface like the counter and looked at it at eye level to make sure that the meniscus, the line of the water, was right there on the 1.5 mark. And now I have a dry measuring cup for my baking soda. So I'm going to do this first. This is going to be 2 cups of baking soda. Actually, I'm going to have some in this big bag first. And you want it to be as level as possible. It doesn't have to be as perfect as if you're baking something you're going to eat, because you're not going to be eating it. But with baking, it is chemistry, so you want it to be as close as possible compared to if you were just cooking something. Alright, there's not enough baking soda in there, so I'm going to put a little bit more. Some clumps. I'm just going to break those up with my fingers. Alright, there's 1 cup goes into the pot. And now we're going to do 2 cups. Again, if you have any clumps, you'll just kind of break them apart with your fingers because you want this to be accurate. We got a lot of clumps. On the counter. My counter is clean, so it's all good. Alright, so that was 2 cups of baking soda. And now I'm going to use the same measuring cup I don't need to clean it. And I'm just gonna wipe off my hands. And we're going to put our cornstarch in. So we're going to need 1 cup of cornstarch. This might puff back a little bit, so you be careful. We're going to level it, give it a little shake in our dry measuring cup. Might take a little bit because you want to be careful. I'm going to switch to the other side. Alright, so that's 1 cup of cornstarch. You want to close that back up so you don't have a mess everywhere. Alright, and now I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. I'm going to measure this over, not over my pot, because just in case you overflow, you might want to do it over the sink if you're in your house, just because vegetable oil can be a bit messy. And now we have our 1.5 cups of water. So the best way to get the best color is to put your food coloring into your water first before you put it in your mixture. I have made this once before and did not get as red of a color as I want. So I am going to put a decent amount of food coloring in. This is the gel coloring, so it should be a bit better than the liquid food coloring. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can just eyeball this. I'm going to mix it with the spoon in a little bit to see how it looks. But you're going to put whatever color you want. And remember, the spices are going to change the color a bit. Now it might not all mix together, but that's okay. It's all going in the same pot. Oh, it's very red. Now I'm just going to pour it all in my pot. And your baking soda is going to fizz a bit. And I'm going to just stir everything together. And if you've ever made oobleck, you might notice that the cornstarch is a bit hard to stir. So it's looking a bit like that. Right, so I've brought it over to the stove now and I've mixed as much as possible. I ended up using a little bit more food coloring, so hopefully that will make it a little bit darker. So that's the best part, put it while it's still liquid, because once it's in the dough form, you're much more likely to get the dye all over your hands. You don't really want that. Alright, so once it's mixed, I'm going to turn this on, and we are just going to let it thicken until it's about the consistency of Play-Doh. So you want to keep an eye on it. You don't have to go super high. You want to keep stirring it occasionally. Just use your best judgment. If you think it's going to burn, turn it down. And we're just gonna stir until it gets to the right consistency, and then we are going to plop it out onto the cutting board and let it cool. So right now I have it on about a medium heat, and we'll see how it goes. So this is starting to cook up into a thick mush, which is what we want. And as it starts to cook, we'll keep stirring until it gets really hard and starts to unstick from the sides of the pan. Alright, I've turned my heat down and it is starting to form into a Play-Doh. So this just needs a little bit more time until it's a little bit less sticky. And then it's good to go. Alright, I've turned off the heat and I'm just gonna kind of stir it together. You might see a little bit of some like white hard parts because it's starting to cook. So that, just stir those right in, and then we'll go and bring it over to the cooking board. Alright, so I brought it over to the cutting board, and now it's looking, as I said, it's got some of those white bits. I'm just going to use the spoon to kind of mushel those in. And we are going to let this cool for several minutes before we do anything else. We don't want to burn our hands. Alright, so I'm just moving it around with my spoon a little bit. I'll try to get some off of the spoon by tapping it in. And we'll let that set, and we'll be back in a few minutes. It's going to take a bit. I would recommend to keep it flattened so that it will cool off even faster. So I've let my dough sit. It did take a bit longer than expected, so it should take about 45 minutes. About halfway through, you might want to be able to, the top is a bit okay to touch, and you might want to flip it over so your bottom cools down. You might get crusty bits all over the top, but that is okay. It's just the dough drying. So you're gonna take your dough and you are going to knead it. So we are just gonna kind of squeeze our hands into it and then push down, and it kind of folds it together. And then we lift it up again and push down, and lift it up again and push down. So of course, make sure that your dough is cool enough for you to all touch. Because it may have been, you know, nice to hold it, but once you start kneading it, the inside might be a bit warm. Right, so we're just going to knead it so we get all those crusty bits out. And now you can see that it's looking a lot like Play-Doh. Now it might be a little bit sticky, but as it dries, if you really wanted to, you could put some more cornstarch, but it will start to change the color. So cornstarch is white, and it's gonna then change it to be lighter. Alright, so now I'm just gonna flatten it out a bit. And your hands might need a slight wash. Alright, so I cleaned off my hands a little bit after kneading. So we want our hands to be a little bit clean. We're gonna do a tablespoon of the cinnamon and a tablespoon of the allspice. So that's why we flattened it out, so that we have a nice surface to put our spices in. My spoon here is a little bit difficult because it's a big heart shape, so it doesn't want to go into the container. I'm just gonna kind of, my clean hand, put some of it back and level it off All right, so we should have about a tablespoon there of cinnamon. I'm going to put that on. Now we're going to need about a tablespoon of allspice. Alright, so there's my tablespoon of allspice. We're just going to put that right next to our cinnamon. So now we should have the two piles, and now we are going to use our kneading technique again. And we are going to knead it in. So we're going to remember to lift up from the bottom, fold it, squish down, lift up from the bottom, fold it, squish down, and we're going to keep going. And you might need to do that on the side. Fold it, squish, fold it, squish. And this is what's going to change your color. But it's going to smell delicious. Right, and now you see that it's turned a bit of a brownish red color. But that's what it is. It smells very much like apple pie, but without the apples. So if you ever had like an apple essential oil, I don't know if they make those, but that would be a great thing to put in here. And you're just going to knead it until it's all mixed in. And now it is ready. You can put it up in a bowl, you can put it in a airtight container, or I have a plastic bag that I'm going to be putting mine in. I would recommend that you definitely wait until it's completely cool, as you're going to get some condensation in your bag. Now, of course, you can now roll this out. You can take some cookie cutters, or if you have Play-Doh toys, and you're all ready to go. So I hope you enjoyed making apple pie Play-Doh, and I know it was a little bit long process, but I hope it was worth the wait, because it smells wonderful and it's really fun to play with. So I'll see you next time. Have a good day.